The Fontaine Factor. Tonight we have a special edition of the Fontaine Factor where we're going to discuss the priorities for the next legislative session for 2012. With me this evening we have Senator Sam Slom, who is the lone senator for the state of Hawaii, a Republican, and Minority Leader Gene Ward, who is also a Republican, who is the head of the Minority Legislative House. So, to start us off with this discussion, we're going to begin by taking a look at the broad issues and problems that are happening right now in our state government. One of those things is the economy. Of course, everybody's got very big concerns about that. And also the swelling amount of government debt that we're accumulating in the state of Hawaii. Those two topics, along with other topics in terms of increase in taxes and other types of fees that have occurred from the past session, will also again, probably be in play this session as well, too. So, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
I thought you were going to say, gentlemen, start your engines.
That's right. That's right. I have to tell you, from the time I was a little boy, one of my dreams was to be on the Fontaine Factor. And now I've realized it. Yeah, and here we are in a new year, and usually we start out, we're very optimistic and all of that. But I think there's a cloud over us because it's been going on for 3-4 years now. And so we've got some very heady topics that we're going to have to deal with as we go into the 2012 legislature. And I know Representative Ward has got a whole laundry list of things that we need to do.
Representative Ward, why don't you lead us off on what your vision is in terms of the minority caucus and what we can do as lawmakers at the state legislature really accomplish in terms of turning this all around. What are your visions?
First, thank you for the invitation to be on such an illustrious panel at a season which is an illustrious time of the year. But as Sam alluded to, it's going to be a difficult session that we're going to be entering to. If I look at the audience and I say, what's on the minds of the people who are listening right now, who are viewing us, I'd say it's jobs in the economy, jobs in the economy, and jobs in the economy. Those three things we cannot get away from because we've got a macroeconomic situation, George, where we've got an economy that's kind of going along and businesses are making money, but they're not hiring anybody. That hiring issue is something that we in the Minority Caucus want to unstick. We want to incentivize hiring. We want to incentivize, for example, I think an excellent bill is the veterans preference for the small businesses. We want to give them an incentive and a break in government procurement. If they're a veteran that's disabled, it would be a 5% incentive. But otherwise, we want to create an atmosphere where the businesses that are out there can feel confident and certain that their legislators are doing the right thing, not over-regulating them, not over-taxing them. And I'm sure my colleague from the Senate will say that we're probably going to get a lot of pulling back of exemptions. We're probably going to get new regulations. We're probably going to get new fees. I've got constituents calling me now, why is this $276 just to register my car coming on? And I said, we had that in the Senate, in the House, and in the Council, and people came and they didn't make the noise even though we voted against it. So it's the jobs issue and the economy that we're going to be focusing on as the primary head of the spear.
Well, I did get a little bit of insight on what was coming down the road from the governor in terms of what he's going to be putting as a part of his package. And one of the things is the soda tax. And what he's proposing is a 10 cents tax on a can of soda and 15 cents on the larger bottle of soda, in addition to the 6 cents recycling fee. So that roughly comes out to an additional cost of 16 cents per unit. If you look at a case of soda, it comes out to be about $3.20. Well, that's what it is. It's $3.20. And so, there's a lot of concern in the beverage industry. And it's not just Coke and Pepsi. We're talking about fruit drinks, and I'm not sure if it's going to include water. But this is the kind of thing that really bothers me personally because it's, again, business coming in and or government coming in, affecting local businesses and trying to regulate lifestyle through taxing. And I think that there's a will to do that from the Democrats because of the fact that they don't want to raise taxes on its face, but they'll be looking at ways that they can increase user fees and other kinds of taxes on specific products like Alcohol tax, we had that before, looking at revisiting that. So, Senator, let me ask you a question. As the lone senator, Republican senator, how have you been managing to move your agenda along with being the super minority? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I look at myself and look at what I represent as the emerging majority. We know that actually the positions that we take, the values that we speak about, are representative of close to half the people here. We look at the election results and we see how close the election really was in 2010. And of course, this year is going to be a major election year, and we're very positive and optimistic. Look, George, you know me, Gene knows me, I don't take any prisoners. I'm totally opposed to tax increases. It is the wrong way to go. It's unnecessary, and it's what's crippled our economy locally here and nationally for a number of years now. Our colleagues in the majority party, they seem to know only two things: tax and spend. And that, of course, results in more debt. The soda tax, well, we got it from the First Lady when she was here during the APEC conference back in November. We're going to change the palates of the children. Well, she's not going to change the palates of my children. That's my responsibility. And I think too often we have given up our responsibilities and we've allowed government to interfere with our lifestyle, with what we eat, what we drink, what we do, and all of that. That is a responsibility of the individual, not of government. There were a lot of taxes, as you alluded to last year, and Representative Ward said that we talked about. They're going to pull back on some of those only because it's an election year. And I think this is a really important point. When we try to advance our agenda, we have a difficult time in the legislature because of the numbers. But if the public really gets interested and gets involved in something, the public can and has made a difference. All you have to do is look at that attempt at the pension tax last year, and you see all those AARP volunteers who were down here in their red shirts every single day. Of course that made a difference. The beverage industry, it's the first time I wanted to take a picture with the Coke guys and the Pepsi guys and the Eat-O-N guys, everybody together. They got organized and they were very able to communicate their message, which is, you raise taxes, what you're doing is damaging jobs further. And I think the problem and why we often are frustrated here, we have constituents, and particularly the small business community, talking to us all the time. We're out and we meet with them. Both Gene and I are small business owners ourselves. The people that are in small business and have created jobs, they know how to do it. They come down here to the big square building and they tell us what they need and how to do it, and then most of our colleagues ignore them and say, okay, we've heard you, now let's have more taxes and more regulations. We've got to change. We have to make that switch, and we have to be, I think, braver and bolder in this year, 2012.
George, let me build on a couple of his points, because I think it was very important when you said we're an emerging majority. If we look at the culture of the people of Hawaii, we already are the majority.
It's true.
The Asian culture, generally speaking, fiscally, socially, economic, all the other values point to, and at one time it was a solid majority Republican, and now the Democrats have made the same mistake in that you've become very inward looking when you have the majority. You take a lot for assumption, but the values of Hawaii has not changed, and that's why I think that day, our day will come, and it's in the hearts and minds of the people of Hawaii. He forgot to mention one name when he said the pension tax died, Representative Maramoto. She brought that up in a finance committee hearing with the government, with your YWAM. You and I were there.
At the auditorium, that's right.
And the governor lost his cool when he insinuated that Representative Maramoto, are you questioning the integrity of my numbers to say that this is going to hurt the old people?
Right.
And certainly it did, and that's been history ever since then. The alcohol tax, along with the sugar tax, George, has been also something that, because of the people showing up, Roy Yamaguchi, Roy's Restaurant, he came and testified. The Tom Jones from Gotaku came and testified. Those two individuals in front of the Finance Committee made a huge difference. But a lot of people think out there, well, I can't make a difference. My vote doesn't count. How can I go down to the legislature? It does make a difference. And if there's anything that we can encourage them to do with this show, is to participate as much and as far engaged with their legislation as possible.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the biggest one that's had the biggest impact, at least for people on Maui, and I'm sure statewide, is this increase in the registration fees for vehicles. And I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten about that. And I voted against that measure along with 17 others in the House. But that alone has increased the cost of living for so many families, because a lot of families have 2 or 3 vehicles. And then you're talking about fleet vehicles that are owned by small businesses that have the increases in fees. You know, one woman said her vehicle registration went from like $200 to like $500. And she couldn't quite figure out where it was all going. You know, it's like, where does this all go? And you know, the discussion on the floor that I had, and a floor amendment that I tried to pass last session, was to say, okay guys, if you're going to do this, you're going to raise it from 25 cents to 45 cents and put a penny a pound per vehicle. You put it in writing that you're going to use it for highways and nothing else. If the highways are so bad, commit to putting it in writing. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And you know, they stood up and argued against it and saying, well, we should be able to use those monies for anything we want.
I've been the poster boy now, even before I got in the legislature, against special funds in this state. We have over 200 special funds. We have more than $1 billion in money, which the public doesn't see. Most legislators don't see unless they question it. Where is that money? What's it used for? And they're so-called special funds because they were supposed to be used for earmarked or special purposes. And what we've found out over the years, whether it's a highway fund or it's a hurricane fund or whatever, that fund grows and grows, and then the legislature just sees that as a source of money and raids that fund. And that's wrong, and that's what we've done. The motor vehicle registration, though, is a good example because it's how the counties and the state have double-teamed the consumer. And I always urge people, whether you're talking about your cell phone bill, your electric bill, your motor vehicle bill, you look at the details on there. You'll find out, just like on a gallon of gasoline, that the majority of the costs are for taxes, whether they're county taxes or state taxes or federal taxes or a combination. And it's just wrong because, you know, people here in the big square building will say, oh, it's only going to add another 30 cents per month. Well, you know, you add the 30 cents to the 50 cents to the dollar, pretty soon it's real money.
Real money.
And that's what we're facing right now.
Folks, if you're just joining us right now, you're watching The Fontaine Factor, and we're very blessed this evening to have 2 leaders from our state legislature and our Senate. We have Senator Sam Slom, and we have Representative Gene Ward from the State House. And we're talking about what's going to be ahead for us in terms of solving the major problems in our state and looking at the 2012 legislative session and coming up with ideas and visions of how this next session will play out and what will be the emphasis. We've talked a lot about jobs in the economy. I'd like to maybe switch gears with you folks a little bit and talk about education. We've had you know, a lot of discussions about different ways that we're looking at that. Gene, what are some of your thoughts about the education system and legislation that perhaps maybe the House might be looking at, or your caucus?
George, a very important question, a huge topic, one that we've been wrestling with for decades in the state of Hawaii. One of the macros of this is the frightening fact that those people 25 and older are more educated than those 25 and younger. First time in the history of the state of Hawaii, first time in the history of our nation where we have actually dumbed down a generation. They are, usually it's always, you know, the parents that are not as educated as the kids. Right now we have a dilemma in that we are 10th, 12th, 14th, 20th compared to other countries in math, science, and other basic survival skills. What America has going for it now is essentially money and ingenuity and entrepreneurship. But we've got to keep our educational system up to par. What our caucus is going to be doing, as it has done in the past, is asking, show me the money. Where does the money go? What's the it's transparency in how the dollars that are one of the highest in the nation are being spent for the students of Hawaii. Some of the good news that's coming out of education are in the charter schools, but charter schools are still a second-class citizen, if you will, because they're not getting full funding. Teachers are not getting full reimbursements. We have a program to give them reimbursement, a tax credit or a debit card, in order for when they buy those supplies in the classroom, they should be reimbursed that. I mean, that's a no-brainer. We, for this year and years in the past, have argued that, and we have not passed it. Why? I think it's totally unfair and very, very short-sighted. In terms of the teacher standards and the other, I think a lot of bills are already in the legislature that are happening, but we've got to specialize and we've got to bump up our expectations. Let me bring in why I'm wearing this shirt. This is the official APEC volunteer short. We hit a home run with 21 nations just a matter of weeks ago in the state of Hawaii. Those APEC countries are going to be far advanced in educational terms unless we at least get up to speed to match what they're doing. Their economies are going gangbusters. We're becoming a debtor nation. When 40% of every dollar we spend is borrowed, primarily, again, from China, that is not a long-range viability for our economy. Education is the key. There's not enough that we can do to better it. And everybody talks about it, but nothing has happened in this.
But there's a problem. We all talk about education, and it means different things to different people. It certainly means different things to the union and to the Department of Education. And a lot of people put their stock in the Board of Education, the newly appointed Board of Education, and it's run into some, I guess, speed bumps along the way. First of all, they can't be a panacea. It's got to be something where the public is fully engaged and involved. Look, we've got a $2 billion annual expenditure for public education in this state, and yet we still can't get an audit. We still can't find out where all the money goes, and we have fewer teachers in the classroom, fewer personnel in the classroom today than we did 10 years ago. Even with the increases in public education enrollment because of the high costs which have driven some families out of private schools, even with that, we're just barely at the same level that we were 10 years ago, and yet our spending continues to increase. We don't have accountability. I certainly agree with Gene in terms of the charter schools. And here's the interesting thing. I mean, a charter school is a public school. And you would think that the DOE and the public school system would embrace charter schools. But they don't. They've always fought to keep them at a lesser level, to deny them funds. Now, have there been problems with charter schools? Of course there are. Just like there are with other businesses and other governmental organizations. But by and large, it's the best example and has produced the best results. The interesting thing to me, though, George, is, we talk in this building about whatever we do, even if we raise our own salaries, it's for the keiki. Everything we do is for the keiki. Well, no, it's not. And that's part of the problem, because if we really loved the keiki, we would see that they would get a superior education. During the Lingle years when the emphasis was on STEM education, we've had some tremendous benefits from that. I mean, Wailua High School and some of the others that have had national and worldwide acclaim in robotics and engineering and all. That should be our emphasis. But we've got to hold people accountable. I mean, when you go and buy a hamburger, you go and buy a car, if something is wrong with that, boy, do you hold the business responsible. But we don't transfer that same level of involvement to government, and particularly to education, and we've got to do more of that. We've got some great teachers, we've got some great programs and great schools, and then we have a lot of mediocre things. And I think the final thing that I would say on education, we've had a number of school closings, and we've had a lot of threatened closings, and Representative Ward and I have battled in East Honolulu to keep superior schools open. The community, which supports their schools because it is a community resource, are never asked, well, can we find an alternative to keep the school open? Can we use it in different ways at different times and all that? That's what a business does. We don't run the schools like a business, and yet we should if we're going to get those good results.
Well, I think one of the encouraging things that I learned about at a recent summit was the Hawaii P20 initiative. I don't know if you folks are familiar with that. But the whole idea is, and I just met with a principal recently at the Kihei School. The standard used to be to having kids being able to read by 3rd grade. Well, now it's 2nd graders need to be reading at 2nd grade level. And the whole idea is just to track and have these students be able to perform at their grade level all the way through. When I talked with the president for UH, Marcy Greenwood, we talked about some of the challenges that UH has been having is that a lot of the kids, and you talked about this with older people being more educated than younger people, this is the problem. They get into college, and now they have to spend 1 or 2 years in remedial classes to get back up to speed so that they can actually do college level work. And what happens with these students is they get discouraged because they want to move on, and they're realizing, well, gee, this may actually take me 5 years now or 6 years to get my degree because I'm so far behind, and they give up, and then they go to a community college and think, well, I can do this part-time and get a job, and the success rate of that is about 5 or 10%. Most of them end up dropping out of college entirely. And let's face it, a college degree today is like a high school diploma was 20, 30 years ago. You used to be able to get a good job without it.
Look, you talk to any business owner in this community who hires young people coming out of the public school system, and you will find that they will spend 50% of their time on remedial basic, reading, writing, mathematics. And that's an indictment of our system. But it's nothing new. When Lex Brody was on the school board 15 years ago, he talked about the same thing. He was the first person on the school board to ever visit all of the public schools in the state of Hawaii. And he didn't ask for appointments, he just showed up there. And a lot of the people in the bureaucracy are very unhappy with that. They want to put on their own show, but they don't want anybody asking questions. Well, we've got to ask the questions, and more importantly, we've got to get the answers.
One of the sad statistics in the school system is that 50% of our families either have not enough money or all of the poverty level funds to where their kids can't be given lunch money. 57% have either full or partial subsidy in our school, which to me goes back to the business model that we have for the people of Hawaii with the visitor industry and then government is not viable with the low wages that we're paying, and that's where the diversification into STEM, into pushing the 3-meter telescope, into the missile range, in other high-tech ventures in green jobs and PV and all of these things, and I know we're going to come up against subsidies to continue for the photovoltaic and others, which I'm for all the way until we more than just lead the nation, we lead the world in terms of energy development. But the business model that we have, people are working hard in Hawaii, and they're getting they're not getting nowhere, but they're getting very slowly to where they are and not where the dream is, which they thought they could be. So I'm discouraged in the sense that we haven't created a diversified economy that can hire these people, and we're losing all these young people, not only because of the high school situation, because they go off to the mainland and they don't come back because there are not the jobs here.
A lot of people don't realize this, and we learned this during the Apex Summit, was that by the year 2050, countries like Japan, the majority of the population will be over the age of 90, and there will actually be fewer children than old people. It'll be like a reverse pyramid. And they project that in the United States, we'll go from 70,000 centenarians to 1 million. So let's talk about healthcare. We just have about 3 minutes left here. Maybe you folks each could give me a minute each on some of your ideas for what we're going to do with healthcare in a nutshell. Gene, you want to lead off?
Healthcare is not only a problem that we've seen every year with double-digit increases. The HMSA and Kaiser just went up again. The cost of healthcare and the way that it's structured is inevitably going to increase because of the way that supply and demand and the way the insurance companies have dealt with us. We've got to be able to nip it in the bud. How we're going to do that, I don't think it's the National Healthcare Program. I think it's using more entrepreneurial principles. The same way when the speaker took a number of us to Taiwan, they actually had a healthcare system, hospital profitability by way of a hospital organized the way lawyers do in a law firm. And it was the incentive in the structure of the incentive that actually made a government hospital turned into a private hospital, private and profitable.
I'm hopeful that Obamacare is going to be overturned in the courts because it is wrong, it's unconstitutional, and it does a lot of damage, not only to health care, which affects all of us. When you're young and strong, you never think about health care. But of course it affects everybody, and the costs are tremendous. What we have done, however, is we have denied people individual choices. We've not used technology to its best. We've not used incentives. Even on Maui, where you had an opportunity of having a privately built hospital, we saw how the bureaucracy stepped in to stop that and have government control. If we have not learned anything, we have to learn that healthcare, like education, like all of these other things, the more choices we have, the more competitive environment we have, the better it's going to be for all of us. We can solve these problems. Well,
I agree. And, I think one of the biggest questions, and I think came up in our government debt meeting that we had was talking about the retirement system and how broken that was. Unfortunately, you know, with the limited time we have on this show, I mean, I think we could do a 2-hour show on this easily in talking about some of these things because they are so important. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that both of these gentlemen are emphasizing is that government is about community involvement and your participation in government. I would assume that you folks agree with that.
Never give up, never give up,
and
never give up.
It's so important for you folks to really engage us, your representatives. You know, we work for you. We don't work for the governor. We don't work for the Republican Party. We work for the people that we represent, and we're here to listen, and we want to get your information and or concerns or questions, whatever they may be. All of these gentlemen, including myself, are listed on the state website where you can email us, you can call us. Most times we're available. For myself on a neighbor island, I'm usually available on the neighbor islands to meet with you folks. That will be more problematic once session starts, but we'll do every effort to keep this a two-way conversation. Gentlemen, thank you again for coming in.
Thank you for the honor.
I think we're going to have an exciting session. We look forward to working with you, Senator Slom, and Jean as our leader at the House in order to...
And I hope the people will stay tuned, keeping us accountable for the things that we've said and the things that we say we're going to do, that they will pay attention and will get feedback through the email and through the telephone to us.
Absolutely.
Well, again, thank you folks for joining us on the Fontaine Factor. We will be doing more legislative updates as the session progresses. You'll probably see us on the air more as the major issues start to develop. We do a show now once a month. This will probably change and ramp up more once session begins. But if you have any concerns or questions, you want to comment on the Fontaine Factor, or you have an idea for the show, please email me at repfontaine@capital.hawaii.gov. That's repfontaine@capital.hawaii.gov. And again, thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again, gentlemen.
Aloha.